hours are vanishing, and you do not even feel them leave. You sit down for 5 minutes. You look up and it is dark outside. You swear you just started. The day is gone. The promise you made this morning lies broken on the floor like shattered glass. This is the ADHD time warp. It bends reality. It erases sequences. It distorts your sense of progress. And if you do not master it, it will master you. There was a classroom once, a clock above the board, white face, black hands. You remember staring at it, certain you had time, certain the test had barely begun. Then the teacher said 5 minutes left. Your chest tightened, your paper half finished. You felt betrayed by something invisible. You walked home feeling behind in speed, behind in focus, behind in life. But listen carefully. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Different minds do not experience time as a straight line. They experience it as a pulse, slow, fast, gone, frozen. Hyperfocus compresses hours into seconds. Boredom stretches seconds into suffering. The world expects linear consistency. You operate in intensity waves. There was a night when you fell into hyperfocus, a project in front of you, music low, lights dim, the outside world faded. You did not eat. You did not check your phone. You were locked in. When you finally surfaced, it was 3:47 a.m. You felt powerful and ashamed at the same time. Powerful because you proved your capability. Ashamed because you could not summon that state on command. That confusion created a fracture in your identity. You began to believe you were inconsistent by nature. But inconsistency is not your identity. Mismanaged intensity is. The time warp happens because your brain measures relevance, not minutes. If something feels urgent, stimulating, meaningful, time collapses. If something feels dull or ambiguous, time dissolves into distraction. So the first step to mastering your hours is this: make time physical. Your brain cannot manage what it cannot see. You need visible countdowns, timers that shrink, clocks that tick loudly enough to create pressure. When seconds move in front of your eyes, the warp weakens. There was a day you placed a large timer on your desk. You set it for 20 minutes. Something shifted immediately. You felt a subtle edge. You moved faster. You stayed on task. When it rang, you felt victorious. Not because the task was perfect, but because time had shape. Shape creates structure. Structure creates safety. The second step: shrink the mission. An entire afternoon feels infinite and overwhelming, so you break it into battles, 15-minute sprints, one objective, no switching, no negotiation. When the timer ends, you reset or rest. There was a broken room once. Clothes everywhere, papers scattered like fallen leaves after a storm. You stood at the doorway frozen, overwhelmed by the scale of chaos. Then you told yourself you would clean one surface only. 10 minutes. That was it. Momentum began. The room slowly transformed. Small victories bend time back in your favor. The third step: engineer stakes. Your brain wakes up when consequences are real. That is why last-minute pressure transforms you into a machine. Instead of waiting for panic, create controlled stakes, public commitments, scheduled reviews, deadlines that cost something. There was a moment when you promised someone you respected that you would deliver by morning. The weight of that promise sharpened you. Focus intensified. Distraction faded. You executed flawlessly. Gravity anchors attention. Without gravity, your hours float away. But there is a deeper layer. The time warp feeds on shame. When you miss a deadline, you spiral. You replay it at night. You call yourself unreliable. That emotional storm consumes energy, and exhausted minds drift further. There was a silent night at 2:18 a.m. You were lying awake replaying the day, regret heavy, the room dark except for faint streetlight leaking through curtains. In that moment you felt like a cracked crown resting on a throne you did not deserve. That was the psychological break, but breaking reveals truth. You realized shame was not correcting you. It was weakening you. So you made a decision. You would replace shame with strategy. Your racing thoughts are not enemies. They are signals. Your emotional intensity is not weakness. It is fuel. Your hyperfocus is not random. It is a weapon waiting for structure. You were built for surges, not steady hums. So design for surges. Work in intense blocks. Rest deliberately. Protect energy fiercely. Track visible progress. Close loops before opening new ones. Fewer missions, deeper execution. You are not late. You are non-linear. And non-linear minds can master time once they understand the warp. This is only phase 1. The storm is rising. The storm is rising, because now you see the enemy clearly. The ADHD time warp is not mystical. It is mechanical. It is your nervous system prioritizing stimulation over sequence. It is your mind chasing sparks while clocks tick unnoticed in the background. You are not careless. You are intensity-driven, and intensity without containment bends hours into oblivion. There was a memory from early adulthood. A job you tolerated but did not love. You would sit at a desk watching the clock crawl. Minutes felt heavy, almost cruel. You checked the time every few seconds, convinced it was moving slower than reality allowed. That was one version of the warp. Then there was another version, late at night working on something that mattered to you, designing, writing, building. Hours vanished. You did not notice hunger. You did not feel fatigue. The clock meant nothing. That was the opposite distortion. Slow torture. Fast disappearance. Same brain, different engagement. This is the core truth. Your perception of time is emotional, so the next level of mastery requires emotional regulation. When your emotions spike, your time perception warps. Overwhelm freezes you. Excitement erases hours. Anxiety creates frantic rushing without precision. To master your hours, you must first master your internal climate. There was a moment when you sat at your desk with 10 tabs open, phone buzzing, thoughts racing about unfinished tasks. You felt paralyzed. The more you thought about starting, the heavier your body felt. That was not laziness, that was overload. So you learned to pause. 3 deep breaths. Eyes closed. Reset posture. Choose one task only. Close every other tab. The chaos reduced. Time slowed. You regained control. Control begins with reduction. Another transformation. Eliminate open loops. Your mind loves new ideas. Every thought feels urgent. Every possibility feels important. So you begin multiple projects at once. They remain half-built, like abandoned towers. Each unfinished structure whispers at you subconsciously. That whisper drains attention. There was a weekend when you listed every unfinished commitment on paper. The page filled quickly. It was uncomfortable. But seeing them outside your head changed something. You chose 3 to finish. You ignored the rest. Completion felt like reclaiming stolen territory. Finished tasks anchor time. Unfinished tasks distorted. You must also confront comparison. Comparison accelerates perceived lateness. You scroll through curated lives and assume you are behind. Your nervous system interprets this as threat. Threat triggers emotional spikes. Emotional spikes distort time further. There was a late evening when you closed every social app for a month. The silence felt strange at first. Then clarity returned. Without constant comparison, your hours felt steadier. You focused inward instead of outward. Your timeline is not theirs. The world glorifies linear growth because it is easy to measure, but nonlinear growth often produces greater force. Long seasons of confusion, followed by rapid ascension. You are built for surges, so the next strategy is controlled intensity windows. Choose specific hours each day that are sacred, non-negotiable. During those windows, eliminate distractions entirely. Phone away, notifications off. Timer running, one mission only. Treat these hours like a throne room guarded by steel. Outside those windows, allow flexibility, exploration, curiosity, movement. This balance prevents rebellion. There was a morning when you protected 90 minutes fiercely. No messages, no interruptions. You completed more in that window than in entire previous days. That experience rewired belief. You began to trust yourself again. Self-trust collapses the warp. Because when you believe you will show up, the future feels tangible. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Different requires design. You must design environments, rituals, and constraints that match your cognitive architecture. Stop forcing yourself into molds that suffocate you. Stop measuring your worth by constant output. Measure it by focused impact. There was a symbolic moment when you cleaned your workspace entirely, threw away clutter, organized tools. It felt like clearing a battlefield before war. The external order created internal calm. Order sharpens time, chaos bends it, and now you feel something new. Not panic, not shame, authority. You are beginning to see that the time warp can be predicted, that your surges arrive after clarity and stakes align, that your paralysis arrives when overwhelm and ambiguity collide. Prediction leads to preparation. Preparation leads to power. The final phase is not about tricks. It is about identity. And identity determines how you move through hours. Identity is the axis everything turns on. For years you identified as someone who loses time, someone who starts strong and fades, someone who lives inside chaos and apologizes for it. That identity shaped your behavior more than any planner ever could. But identity can be reforged. There was a night when you sat alone after another day that slipped away. The room was quiet. The glow of a single lamp cast long shadows against the wall. You felt tired of repeating the same story, tired of promising tomorrow would be different, tired of calling yourself undisciplined. In that silence, something hardened. You realized the time warp was real, but it was not unbeatable. You realized you had been waiting to feel ready, instead of deciding to become strategic. That moment did not feel dramatic. It felt cold, focused, intentional. That was the beginning of mastery. You stopped asking, why can I not be normal? You started asking, how do I design for my nature? That shift is everything. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Different minds require deliberate containment. You no longer romanticize chaos. You no longer excuse drift. You understand that your brain runs on intensity, so you feed it structured intensity. You choose fewer battles and fight them fiercely. There was a memory from childhood that once felt like proof of failure. A project due in days. You delayed. You wandered. You drifted. Then the night before, you erupted into action. You completed it in a single focused storm. The result was impressive, but the cost was exhaustion and shame. Now you see that story differently. You were capable all along. You simply lacked controlled ignition. So you build ignition rituals. Same time, same place, same cue, over and over. Your nervous system learns the signal. Focus becomes less dependent on panic and more dependent on design. You also accept that rest is strategic. There was a period when you tried to grind endlessly. You pushed through fatigue. You ignored emotional strain. Productivity spiked briefly, then collapsed. Days blurred together in fog. That was not weakness. That was depletion. Now you plan recovery before collapse. Walks without devices, silence without stimulation, sleep treated like armor repair. You understand that your brain is a high-performance engine. Engines overheat without maintenance. This is discipline redefined, not rigid imitation of others. Precise management of your own intensity. Another flash surfaces. A lonely walk under streetlights after feeling behind in life. You used to look at illuminated office buildings and imagine everyone inside moving faster than you. Now, walking that same street, you feel something different. Not comparison, direction. You know your peak hours. You guard them. You know your triggers for distraction. You design around them. You know your emotional spikes distort time. You regulate them before they escalate. Awareness has replaced confusion. Confusion once bent your hours into chaos. Awareness straightens them. You understand that time mastery is not about feeling every minute pass. It is about allocating energy with intention. You cannot change how your brain perceives time entirely, but you can control how you respond to that perception. When you feel drift, you reduce options. When you feel overwhelm, you shrink the task. When you feel boredom, you increase stakes. When you fall, you reset immediately. That speed of reset is your greatest weapon, because the time warp feeds on delay. You starve it by acting quickly. There was a recent morning when you completed your most important task before noon. Not rushed, not frantic, focused. When you looked at the clock afterward, you did not feel chased. You felt ahead. That feeling was unfamiliar but powerful. You were not reacting, you were commanding. This is what mastery feels like. Not perfect, controlled. You will still experience distortions. You will still have days when hours slip, but they will no longer define you. They will be data, feedback, signals to adjust. You are no longer at war with your brain. You are in command of it. The ADHD time warp once felt like a curse whispered by every ticking clock. Now it feels like terrain you know intimately. You know where it traps you. You know where it accelerates you. You navigate accordingly. Underestimation becomes fuel. Past shame becomes instruction. Lost hours become lessons. You stand in your own rhythm now, not apologizing, not comparing, designing. Time is no longer an invisible predator. It is a resource you shape with intention. Master your hours. Own your storm.